An old book. Book about witchcraft.
You're listening to the Whitewood Podcast, a show about mystery schools, the occult, and witchcraft.
Would you like to have a look around?
Why have you come to Whitewood?
Well, because I'm interested in witchcraft.
I'm your host, Nate. Come with us as we delve into the history, techniques, and backstories of these traditions and the people who practice them.
Welcome back to the Whitewood Podcast. My name is Nate Driscoll, and this week we're bringing on a guest. I've been very excited because this weekend we spent some time in Denver, and huge group of occultists, many of whom I really genuinely have had long-term relationships with. We had met, a year, 2 years ago? And one of the things that was really interesting when I met you was we clicked off literally immediately.
We did.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So to introduce, you're my friend Lyric.
Hi, Nate.
Yeah. And I thought it was really funny when we first met because we clicked off to the point where, not to be crude, but like within the first 2 hours of being in a room together, we were comfortable enough that we were talking about like everything from like emotional trauma to periods to like, hormones to like, stuff that's going on in our personal life. And it was just like an immediate mesh.
It really was. It really was.
Yeah.
We got real personal real fast, but it was easy.
Yeah.
Right. It was super easy.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like going deep with people. It's fun.
Yeah. No,
right?
absolutely.
I think our depth of relationships are based in how, like the strength of our relationships are based in the depth we can go together.
Yeah, and when you're in a safe enough environment, because you can tell pretty quick how people are responding to stuff, right? And when you're in a safe enough environment that you can open up to some of the stuff that you like might be either a taboo topic or a more vulnerable side of yourself, you're just really tearing down those layers of filters that we sit in between ourselves in order to like protect our ego and like our own, like our own bullshit, And what I loved about meeting you is that it was almost as if those filters weren't there from the beginning. It wasn't necessarily we had to like work on tearing them down. It was like,
no, I don't think they were really there. I mean, you meet a new person, you're initially a little cautious, right?
Yeah.
And then we're like, I know you.
Yeah, because you do, because we know other people that are awesome and in our community and stuff like that.
Right.
So, we bring on a lot of different guests. We talk about a lot of different types of occult stuff. And I know I've talked to you a little bit about some of the different traditions that landed you where you are. What was the first aspect of the occult or esotericism or like some type of practice towards, those types of efforts that acted as like that spark moment that you were like, oh, hey, what's this interesting thing that led you down the road that you went down?
Oh, that's a great question. From an occult perspective, I took a mythology class in high school.
Okay.
And Greek and Roman, the standard, right? And our teacher decided that she wanted us to write like a creation myth. Mm-hmm. And my creation myth was me as God.
Okay. Yeah. That's hilariously awesome. Yeah.
And she took me aside and she's like, I'm really uncomfortable with this. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And I said, I get an A though, right?
Right. Was it well written enough that I get an A for making you uncomfortable?
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And it was that place where I woke up and I said, wait a second. Something's deeper here. Mm-hmm. I just, I had no words for it. I triggered a lady back then.
Right.
I was like,
yeah.
I made this teacher mad because I had the audacity, the boldness to say, hey, and this was fiction, right? It's a creation myth. Like what's uncomfortable?
Right.
Right. So I thought that was interesting. And then I just kept going down that road. I was like, well, these people are interesting. What's this about?
Yeah.
And reading a few more things and then meeting a witch.
Yeah.
And she and I hit it off and she's like, I've got this place, come. And I dove into, Wicca, Gardnerian Wicca.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was really timely. It really did me well in my life.
Right.
And yeah, it just unfolded from there. And my passion has always been ritual.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
one of the things that I remember you opening up a lot about when we first met was the ritual for the mechanism of achieving ecstasy. Like you were really, really big at that point on like that concept of like dissolving into ecstasy.
Dissolving into ecstasy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But there was also something else that you had just said that kind of reminds me of something that was almost like a precursor, like foreshadowing towards occult practice. You were talking about how your teacher had been like, wow, this makes me really, really uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a solid thing to be said about the theme in occult practice across the board being some of this will challenge you by making you a little uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. And there might be a lot of discomfort at times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that you're still, like you're still finding your own self-power. And,
right.
and I think it was really elegant that the thing made someone uncomfortable and was about your own personal power. Like it was about like your own divinity in this mythology that you had created. Right. I think that's awesome. Yeah. Now, you were mentioning that you got into Wicca first. I think that's a really common thing. Mm-hmm. I myself found Wicca first. Mm-hmm. I think that for me, it was that I was starting to renounce the religions that I was raised in. Mm-hmm. And then I didn't really know what else there was because I was living in such a closed, protected family that like no one had ever explained to me like, here's the 50,000 religions that exist and all their subcultures and all these things, right? I was just like, oh, well, there's the people that don't like me and the people they don't like. Mm-hmm. And so if these people don't like me, I should go hang out with the witches. And that was like the only comprehension that I really had at that age, right?
Sure.
And then often people will kind of use that as a launching off point. Mm-hmm. And that's a really common thing that I find in Wicca is that people either get a whole ton out of it or it's a perfect launching off point into other stuff.
Well, I think Wicca is the pagan lingua franca.
Okay.
If you will. Like it's the easiest thing in. They're very numerous. It's an easy way in.
Yeah.
And most places that would have called them pagan, I was doing this in the late 80s, early 90s. Mm-hmm. Wicca was in the swing. Right. And so when you went to a place that said, hey, we're doing this thing, we're celebrating the earth, we're, dancing under the moon, the rituals are typically going to be Wiccan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Was it a specific branch of Wiccan? Like, was it more like down like the Gardner route, the more Alexandrian style, or was it more like free form?
Well, it was an interesting place. It was interfaith sanctuary of earth religion, mm-hmm. and these folks were building standing stones on top of a mountain. Mm-hmm. Rollers and ropes, 3-ton stone. By hand,
wow.
Rolling it. Yeah, I called it the blood, sweat, and tears paganism. I was really like, cool. They were intense people.
Yeah.
And so the person who was, doing a lot of ritual, when she did training, she did Gardnerian.
Yeah, okay.
But it was a gathering place for people of any tradition. So there were Alexandrians there. There was a camp that they were Alexandrians. Some they were the radical fairies. Bunch of different people doing different things. So anybody could be like a couple in service and have their team do ceremony.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because they gathered for new and full moons, and it was a good time.
So assume one of the listeners has never experienced any Wiccan rite whatsoever. No ritual, no initiation. They're walking in for the first time. Describe like what that felt like, the emotional connection that you had. You're walking in, you don't know what it is. You like this person. Like obviously you connected with them enough to show up.
Right.
But then like. There's still like that, what is this mysterious thing aspect? Mm-hmm. And then if it is an appropriate thing to comment on, because I know some things are more private and we like those kind of things, what did you actually find there? Like what did the ritual look like and what was the thing that hooked you and kept you there, as opposed to it just being like a passing fancy where you say, oh, that's an interesting, I'll go check that out for a weekend. And, oh, you know what? I'm glad that some people are doing that, but it's not for me. Like, what was the thing that hooked you into it?
I believe it was an energetic.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you what my very first ritual looked like. I have no memory of it.
Really?
All I knew,
That's awesome.
None.
Yeah.
And all I knew is I needed to go back. And then I just kept going back. And then I kept going back. And then I was like, this ritual stuff, this fascinates me.
Yeah.
And I walked up to people, I'd find out who was in service and say, do you need any help?
Yeah.
I'd scrub the base of the mother stone if that's what they wanted me to do.
Yeah. Totally.
And in Wicca, of course, that's maiden work, right? You start out as the acolyte and you do the dirty work. I'll clean up after ritual. I'll do the things with the candles, that kind of thing. And I would do anybody that wanted any help at all.
Yeah.
Because I was just fascinated. And it was the pageantry of it too, right?
Okay.
Like, the ritual with the beautiful altar and the people dressed well and
Right.
costumes sometimes, depending on if the costume was required or if it was just beautiful robes or something, right? There's a lot of movement in that kind of thing, where I was exploring that. And then somebody would come up with some working and you do a working.
Yeah.
Call elements, you have your weapons, right? Your earth, air, fire, and water.
Right.
And you build your space and you do the work.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. It was energetically beautiful. It was physically beautiful. It was creatively beautiful. It caught me lock, stock, and barrel. I
Yeah.
was like, this is where I need to be.
And when you found yourself, so there's something to be said about the ancient ideas about like the way that beauty enters the body and the way that beauty is experienced as like this external divinity entering through the eyes and thus creating the change in the individual of the emotional state, right? And so you find this beauty and you find yourself in a community of people that are also experiencing that together.
Yeah.
And some of them are on the lower end, they're just getting started. And there's something very real about how the service of taking care of the temple is a really great starting point for getting connected with devotional work, getting connected with magical work, and doing so in an environment where you start to learn how service is a magical operation.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. You have to be willing to do that piece in order to do the other things.
Right.
I learned a lot by doing that. You're doing whatever work they want and they're talking.
Right.
And you're listening.
Right. Right. Yeah, you get to be in for the
They're
conversation.
practicing
now.
and you're watching.
Yeah.
Right. You see what works. You experience their voices, their energy. What are they bringing to the table? I
Right.
mean, and then you get to experience the ceremony itself. It's
Right.
powerful stuff. Especially if they're good at it.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
That's a really
they
big
have to
one.
be good
right?
at it.
I will say this to people who are listening that haven't been around for a really long time, right? I'm talking to you directly, I promise. So when you find that first group and it's not what you expected and you're like, wow, that's a really big letdown. Nate sure sold that really hard because all of this podcast seems super interesting, but then I go and see and it's a super big letdown that I wasn't emotionally invested in. Yeah. Go find another group and give it another try. 'Cause
Exactly.
There's some people that are good at it, like really
Good
good at
at
it, and it is going to blow your mind.
It's
it is
true.
amazing.
It's true. And so if you're lucky, you get that right out of the gate.
Yeah.
And if it feels just like, wow, that was kind of a letdown, go try something else.
Yeah.
I have a motto: try anything twice, unless it's egregious.
Okay,
Like, you
yeah,
should
yeah.
try anything
Yeah.
twice. Like, so, for example, Noticon, right? My first Noticon, the Noticon had, its way with me more than I had my way with Noticon. Noticon's its own kind of entity. I'm experiencing this thing for the first time. And it's a different kind of reception than when I go to the next Noticon and I'm engaging more fully with the energetic of Noticon and the people.
Right.
It's a very
and
different
so
experience.
For
Yeah,
people,
so-
for people that don't know what Noticon is, Noticon is the National Ordo Templi Orientis convention, where members of the fraternal order get together from all over the country, and we have a party, and we eat food together, and enjoy each other's company, and there's lectures, and there's
Yeah.
there's ritual, and just an incredible sense of community.
Absolutely.
Right.
family.
And not to say that that's the only place that it exists in the occult world either. I would say that it's one of the really amazing things is that there's a lot of communities out there. Some of them I'm a member of and some of them I'm not. But I still like really think that it's amazing when somebody can go into a space like that and find support, find people who are interested in the same types of topics that you are, find people who are starting to experiment with a philosophy that you're really into, or vice versa. You know, like
Exactly.
you're just starting and they have been experimenting with it for a long time, so they can cue you into certain types of books and stuff, or just have some drinks, enjoy company with people that see things the way that you do. I mean, it's a really powerful experience to be surrounded by.
It really is. I mean, we crave community. I mean, we like our quiet time. We all like our quiet time, especially here, right?
Right, yeah.
And at the same time, we do crave community. That camaraderie, that building of the energy that keeps us going. It stokes the fires of connection for the work we do,
Yeah.
right? I think that personal connection deeply matters. I think that's why organized religion has worked for as long as it has. You know,
Absolutely. That's
there
a
is-
major component to
It's
it.
a major component to it. I find that it feels good. It just feels good. Everybody feels happy. And, when you're in a good space with your community, there's, it releases all the good, endorphins, right? You
Absolutely.
know?
Yeah.
Right.
So that brings to mind. So you're experiencing Wicca for the first time. You
Yeah.
found this group of people, and would you comment on like the aspect of community, what you felt in that community? What were some of the things that you found positive? Because there's people practicing alone, and that's totally okay. Like
Right.
like there are enough materials out there where you can get started and really get pretty far without anybody at all. But there is something really just human about community.
I think that, and this is me, I was like,
Oh,
this is
yeah, of
my
course.
mileage. I honestly believe, based on my experience, that I did a lot of solitary stuff. I did yoga solitary. I did some magic solitary, but until I understood the experience and deeply grokked the experience of group work,
Yeah.
it was then when I became a better solitary practitioner.
Oh, that's interesting. So it didn't just make you good at doing group work, it made you better at doing solitary work.
Absolutely. It absolutely made me a better, more powerful solitary witch.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really solid
And
perspective.
my private practice, my solitary practice is still something that I do consistently.
Yeah.
And I also will not give up my group practice as
Right.
much as I can get of that, because it's rejuvenating, right? It's generative.
Right.
When we're with ourselves and then we're with the other. Being with the other is generative.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
When it's really good, right?
Yeah.
When we uplift and inspire each other.
Yeah. And okay, you just touched on the word inspire. And I think that's one of the biggest things about community for myself is I don't want to live in a world where my heroes are long dead and gone and I'm reading their words in a cold paper. Now, it's great to have some heroes from history. I want to be inspired by people who are my contemporaries and be a part of something where they're an inspiration to me and then I am an inspiration to others. And it's this large interconnected network of people that I look up to regardless of status, regardless of, oh, he's the high priest or he's a higher degree in the order, or, like there are people who inspire the shit out of me that are, just coming in the door for the first time. And I
Sure.
see a trait in them, or I see a hunger or a thirst for information in them. And I'm like, wow, man, that's really inspiring that that person just dove right into that particular magic system that I've always thought was kind of interesting, but I've been working over in this other field of research right now. And like, I don't want to live in a world where my heroes are ghosts.
I get you there.
I want to
Yeah.
live in a world where my heroes are my family.
I
you
get
know?
that. I have enjoyed meeting people that I've read their book or I've seen them on a Zoom, right?
Yeah,
or something of that
absolutely.
nature. And then going to magnificent classes that I'm like, wow, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that transmission. I really appreciate your voice. And
Yeah.
I experienced that a lot this weekend.
I did too. Yeah, that was one of the things that I found really empowering for myself. Is there were a large deal of pretty prominent authors that were here with us this particular weekend at this particular
Absolutely,
event, you know? And many of their works I've read over and been like, wow, I really like his writing style, like the way that this other one describes this other thing. This other author really makes me think. I had never, viewed any of this in that aspect. And you start to, especially if you're disconnected from like mainstream media, celebrity culture, you start to really be like, wow, man, this guy really gets it. I really look up to this person. And then you go meet him and they're like a real human being, and they're like,
real human
hey man, you want to go
being,
get a chicken sandwich?
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck yeah, I do. Like they're like real to you.
Yeah.
And it's awesome because it kind of breaks down that wall of these people being like unapproachable and like off on pedestals somewhere that, like you meet them in person, and don't get me wrong, there's asshole fucking authors all over the place.
Sure,
right?
sure.
I didn't run into any this weekend.
I didn't either.
There are asshole authors all over the fucking place. But like most of those types of people are just excited that, they wrote that book and it took hundreds of hours to do that.
Absolutely. That's hard work.
Yeah. And they did it because they're interested and obsessed with this information, just
it's
like
the
you
passion.
are.
It's a passion.
It's a passion,
Yeah.
right? And it consumes them, and it consumes you because, you're also one of the people that's sitting there reading this book thinking, oh my God, that's so interesting. I got to get more. I got to, like see more information about this. What are the sources that are cited in the footnotes? What are the, and one of the things that I've noticed reaching out to people and being like, hey, I had a question about chapter 5 in your book that you wrote 20 years ago, and I don't even know that you're going to respond. And then like an hour later, they're like,
Nice.
I'm just so happy that someone wants to talk about this because all I ever want to do is talk about this. And like, they're
Nice.
excited that you're excited about the same information that
Well,
you
sure.
are.
I mean, I think that, why put out the information if there's no reception? Again, less for results, but at the same time, it feels kind of good when there's some results.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that admiring people that do that kind of scholarship, for me, it's appropriate because I'm unlikely to do that level of scholarship.
Sure.
I've got other paths and things I work on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's really wonderful to be able to experience people that have really thought about a particular aspect of something and get their download.
Yeah.
Right. And, in your hour talk. No, I may never be an expert on that, or I might, who knows? Maybe I'll go down that rabbit hole too,
Right.
Because they may inspire me to do so.
Absolutely.
Right.
But then like also kind of to follow up what you were saying is like a community takes all sorts of people.
It really does.
And so it is awesome to be able to talk to some of the people that are like doing the scholarly research, but then it's also really interesting to talk to some of the people who are, approaching it from a different aspect, because every single member of this community is valuable to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I had a really, really, I don't want to get into like specifics on degrees and stuff like that, but there was an individual who was just now entering our community. It was, they had just found our community like 16 months ago, and they were here immersed in like the deep end of the pool where, like everybody, everyone that's not at this hotel right now, over the past weekend, like we noticed that you're not here. The list of people that are here right now is bigger than the list of people who are not here in like in our circle of like interest. It's amazing, right? And so to get like their perspective, and like I've been doing this particular branch of magic for 10 years. I'm starting to forget a little bit of what it felt like on day one. The things that was like, oh, I'm a little nervous about this. I don't want to come off as if I don't know what I'm talking about, but I don't want to come off as an expert because then people, might think I'm pretentious. And man, the mysteries are really interesting, and I haven't really gotten to engage with them too much yet. But I know that there's something of value here, and like that whole mindset that I know I had when I first joined our community. Mm-hmm. And here I'm talking to somebody. It's they're in month 16 of the same journey I've been here for 10 years, the same journey that some of the people downstairs have been here in for 50 years.
50 years.
Yeah. Absolutely. Right.
All right.
And so it's like that also has value, and those people are also really valuable in the same way that, and this is going to be a weird, obscure side reference, but in the same way that, like, if you're like an alcoholic going through like a support group, like a steps system, like Alcoholics Anonymous or something like that, the person who's been sober for 15 years is as valuable as the person who stopped drinking yesterday, because the person who stops drinking yesterday can gain a lot of inspiration and technique and how do you do this from the person who's been doing it for 15 years. But the person who's been doing it for 15 years needs to look at the person who quit yesterday, because he needs to remember. He needs to look at it and be like, you know what? I really can't go back to that. Like I need to draw inspiration from that mindset. And so it's a similar thing where somebody walks in and you look at them and you're like, how awesome is it to be able to look back in time and to see that first moment of like approaching a community and that blank slate experience. So it's not quite a good analogy, because like in AA there's a little bit of like, I don't want to go back to that. Whereas like in our community, it's almost like you do kind of want to go back to it because you want that blank slate experience again.
I think it's important to go back to be in a place of beginner's mind.
Yeah. Beginner's mind is so important.
I want to be like, well, I don't know.
Right.
Let's just find out.
Yeah.
Right. Because, obviously I know that I know far less than there is to know.
Yeah. And the day you think you have it all figured out, tomorrow you're going to get hit by a truck. Like, and it's going to be one of those like psychological mind fucks where you're like, oh, I had very little figured out. Like, it happens to me all of the time where I'm like, I have definitely learned everything that there is to learn about this one particular symbol or whatever.
Have
and
you
then
now?
The next day, I crumble under the weight of the new information that had not yet been released on my brain.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, I remember this feeling. Let's fucking do this.
You taunted your higher self.
Yeah.
You taunted it.
Yeah. Well, it's a humbling experience, and I enjoy the destruction of the ego a lot. Like, there's a reason why I experimented with the types of things that I did throughout my life, and the sensation of being broken down and like reverting back. Like in alchemy, it's that process of calcination where you're breaking down everything that's and turning into an ash state. And I like that breaking down of the ego.
I think the dissolution of the ego is primary importance to personal work, self-development, like evolving my soul,
right.
Evolving me, becoming a better human being. I think that has to dissolve in order for that to happen. And everybody's on their own journey with that, right? Everybody's at their own pace. Everybody's doing their own thing, and you're going to come at it from whatever way you come at it. That's what I like about Thelema in particular is we all have our angle, right?
Yeah.
It's the acknowledgement of the individual perception with you as a divine being who I can't see through your eyes, but I can experience you through mine.
Yeah.
Right. And finding the connections and also like really celebrating the differences. Like, wow, this guy's really intense on this thing that like when I read about it, wow.
Yeah.
Right.
But then picking their brain after they finally get it is one of the best experiences.
The best thing
because you're like, man, that was going in one ear and out the other for me. Like, because you find yourself reading random 14th century manuscripts that have been translated 3 times into different languages, and it's not resonating. And you're like, I don't understand even the sentence context, not to mention like what is happening here. Mm-hmm. And then like for example, one of the guys here that did a presentation, he studied like 2 pages of a book that is on many of our bookshelves for like a year and a half, because it was just cryptic enough that he was like, there's something to this, but I really can't comprehend because this author's not really good at this, and he wrote it originally in this old language, and the context has changed since the 1600s, and he just couldn't drop it,
I need to know what this says.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And that's what's that?
Yeah. And then he comes out of that year of studying 2 fucking pages in this larger manuscript, well, it's a book. I don't know that I'd call it a manuscript, but he comes out of that experience and he's got this very incredibly interesting mathematical process that's laid out in those 2 pages that was just, it was worded confusingly. And like, it goes into like taking this from this specific breakdown of the Hebrew alphabet, and then like astrologically associating it over to this other system.
I was in that class.
Yeah. And it's like the thing that is so awesome about being around that person is that, like, you know, I read those 2 pages and felt burnt out by it, and was currently in the midst of passion with this other text.
Right.
And so I set it down and I was like, man, I am super fucking curious about that, and I would love to dive really deep into it. And I'll probably get to it next. And then you talk to somebody who just went through it and they're like, hey, I figured it out. Here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3.
It's good.
And you're like, oh shit, now that I've seen it in that format, like that actually makes a lot of sense. And now I can reference back to those pages and, you know, it's clearer. You know,
it's good. And the times when somebody who does that, right? And I was lost, right? Like I got lost by that. I have no idea what that said. You know what that said? Yo, you want to share what that said? Thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, I think we have our deep divers, and I think they're necessary.
Yeah.
Because not everybody has the inspiration to go down some of those rabbit holes.
Sure.
But those rabbit holes are really important to be unpacked.
Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, what's in there? Hey, you know, excellent. Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you, my friend. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that community matters because it's how we share all of our expertise, all of our wills, all of our interests, all of our, you know, just, oh my God, did you hear about this?
And it's also how we celebrate the ecstasy that is communication and experiencing each other.
Absolutely.
Like the experience of experiencing other people while they're experiencing you.
I know, right?
You know, like we deal with it on a daily basis, so we don't think about how fucking magical that alone is, and how, like, there's a fucking mystic secret in the fact that we are capable of having a conversation in the first place.
Right.
It's amazing. And to experience the ecstasy of emotionally bonding or intellectually bonding or just talking to that other person alone is something of import. Okay, so one thing that, before we get too far away from it, because I know that if I don't bring it up now, I'm going to forget. And I really want to touch on it because it was an interesting thing that you said. You mentioned how important certain types of these things are. And then you kind of like stated a goal as you were describing it. And I think that outside of the occult, people don't realize that's a really common goal. But inside the occult, it's all we're fucking talking about.
Right.
And it's this self-development idea of like, I need to do this so I can become better, you know, so that I can improve myself. And so, you know, like that's a really, really common trait where people in our community are trying to be well-educated on various topics, whether that's like the more mathy stuff that we were just talking about,
Sure,
philosophy, emotional intelligence, some of the self-help, like psychological information that's available, like you just at your local Barnes and Noble, you know, like those types of things. So I guess my question is, if you would talk towards that point of like, if we're experimenting with magic, first off, how is it helping you self-develop? And second off, why do you give a fuck to self-develop?
Okay. Well, I think I'll answer the second one first.
Okay.
Why do I give a fuck to self-develop? So I'm a good human.
Yeah.
I'm here to do good.
Yeah.
I'm here to uplift. I'm here to inspire. I'm here to love. Me working on me taking care of me is how I take care of my community. And the deeper we go into our own well-being and into a place of deeply loving ourselves and understanding our own spark, our own divinity, the I am God, right?
Yeah.
And understanding that everybody I'm looking at is there too. Like I'm looking at myself.
Right.
Right. And sometimes it's real tangible right up in your face. And otherwise it's more of this like, wow, I'm looking at this other brilliant creature. I can care for that creature that being, that human, that animal, the plant, whatever it is, right? Because that's true, right? When we're connecting with any living thing, but people in general, like I'm connecting with this person, this human. How can I be the best human I can be to connect well with this other human, because I want to care about you. I want to be kind.
Right.
I want to be loving. I think it's the work.
Yeah.
Right. So we can better be with each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I ask people that have been in relationships a long time. Number one, communicate.
Communication's key.
Communicate.
Especially if your relationship is going to be non-traditional in any fucking respect
any
whatsoever.
kind of way, and laugh.
Yeah.
Know how to laugh.
Yeah,
right. And laugh at
absolutely.
yourself. Laugh at our foibles.
Yeah.
Right.
Communication, humor, like not taking things so personally all the time.
Right.
And then when you accidentally do, because we all take things a little personally
Absolutely,
sometimes,
we do.
And we internalize some bullshit.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
I'm
a true
totally
story.
there with everybody else doing the same shit in my own head. Yeah, right. But like
you do
when
that
you
too?
do,
Yeah.
like talk to people about it. Admit to like especially if you're going to spend 20, 50, a million years with your fucking partner.
Right.
If you're gonna do that, like the next time you feel self-conscious, just fucking tell them.
Well,
You know?
right? It's like they already know. You know what I mean? If you're spending so much time with someone, you got friends or deep friends or partner, they already know.
Yeah.
Right? Tell them.
Well, one
I
thing
think
that
they
really
know on a
helps-
subliminal level, but
Yeah.
we're conscious of energy if we're conscious of energy in our
Right.
partners, right? But the verbal always helps people out.
Yeah.
Just help 'em
Yeah,
out.
because what can happen, and definitely talking about myself here, like what can happen is, I have an interaction with somebody. Let's say it's somebody that I've been intimate with for 10, 15 years, right? And I love this person very, very much, right? And they might say something that I react to, and I might react in a way that, comes off as one thing, but was really another thing.
Sure.
Maybe you sounded just like my mother in that moment. Maybe you triggered some trauma that I have from an argument 15 years ago with a friend. Who knows? Like, whatever the thing is, I respond to not what you said, but to how I felt 15 years ago towards whatever that thing is, right? And then if I don't tell you that and open up and take accountability for that and be like, hey, you know what? I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to be like that. And holy fuck, like I feel bad. And this is where that was coming from. And like communicate, like actually communicate about it.
Well, be in
Then-
intimacy.
right. Then that person can a lot of times internalize it, and it can become like a two-way disruption where they might be like, oh man, that person yelled at me the same way that my dad did, or like,
Totally.
oh shit, I didn't realize that was such a touchy topic for that person. I fucked up. I'm such a piece of shit in a relationship because, and they can so you got in your own head.
Absolutely.
And then they get in their own head. And the only thing that disrupts that, that reverberation that causes all the distortion is to just, hey, this is what really happened, and I'm really sorry. Like,
Yeah, this was happening for me. It wasn't about you.
Right.
Right. That place around. This was said. I'm not blaming you, but this is how I received it
Yeah.
because of my own stuff.
Right.
Right. Our honesty with each other, our directness with each other around those kinds of things is really important.
Yeah.
I don't want to live in a place where the people closest to me aren't willing to tell me what's going on, or I can't tell them what's going on.
Yeah, and it's like a ripping the Band-Aid thing off. Like, one of the best things you can do is go tell people how you really feel, and the ones that flip out or are shitty about it or are toxic about it, just be like, oh fuck, that person wasn't my friend or loved one in the first place. There's something askew here. I'm sure better off by knowing that now.
Right.
And now I can tend to that fucking, that situation. Or maybe I choose to leave the situation.
Well, it's a definite red flag, right? If
Right.
somebody can't, experience you as you,
Right.
right? Especially feelings, right? And because we're feeling creatures, we're emoting creatures, and I think a lot of us have shut down some things, but I don't want to be shut down. I want to be open. I want to be have a healthy emotional body. I want to be able to move my emotions, let it flow through, and then I'm in the next space and I'm changed because I did that work.
Right.
Right. I think emotional work, it's often characterized by the moon, by the waters. Well, we're mostly water. Learning how to manage your water is important. What are you saying
You know,
to yourself?
specifically
What are you
in
singing to
water
yourself?
and like moon cycles and things like that. I've often wondered. Okay, so you're 70% water, and we understand the relationship between gravity and water. Like the moon has its own gravitational pull; it creates the pull of the tides. The reason why there's a high tide and a low tide is this, water sloshing back and forth, reacting to the gravitational pull of the moon, right? And we're all aware of that, and that's scientific, and nobody thinks anything mystical about it, right? And
Then there's us.
there's like a human being made of 70% water, and it's a very easily disruptible system. We know that it's an easily disruptible system because if I'm too fucking hungry, I get grumpy, and if I take a little bit of that medicine over there, then it might make me all drained and weird and
Right,
zonked out, or
right.
maybe it's a healthy thing and it like adjusts me. Like you're this really, really temperate balance where it's not hard to unbalance in this direction or that direction.
It's true.
Using like environmental factors, right? Out of every astrological thing that's out there where they're like, that random star right there is associated with money and communication, and then the moon is associated with the emotional state. And I mean, are you not a bag of water that's regularly going through a cycle of this gravitational
We are totally a
scientific
bag of
pull?
water.
We are
We are totally a bag of water.
Would it really be that much of a stretch to assume that that cycle, which pulls millions of gallons of water several feet to the left and the right, every single day,
It's affecting us. It's affecting us.
There probably is a less mystical reason for that particular one than people are willing to admit. Now, I can understand, if you're coming from a more pragmatic stance on astrology, and maybe some of the more distant planets, you don't really see eye to eye with the idea of cause and effect between this thing and that thing. I will tell you that I disagree with you if that is your opinion.
It's not.
Yeah, I have seen a lot of really, really interesting things with astrology that kind of blow my mind, but. Hey,
Planetary
if you had
magic's
that one,
neat.
okay, but the moon one kind of freaks me out.
No,
'cause,
the moon one is really important. I mean, I believe in vibration.
Okay, yeah.
I believe in it because it's a thing. It's,
absolutely.
Quantifiable.
Yeah.
Our water, as shown, responds to vibration. So if I choose my vibrations that I have around me, and that what I'm taking into me,
Right.
then I'm choosing my vibration.
And there's something really, really real about the way your environment shapes your psychology.
Absolutely.
Like even if you take a step into the more scientific side of stuff, and you're not looking at the mystical and the vibrations and the those types of things, if you're only looking at how does color therapy affect human beings? What about aromatherapy? Do certain smells bring out certain types of things in human beings? Of course they do.
Yeah.
What color is your house?
They're
what color is your
important.
office?
Yeah.
Why do casinos use certain types of colors in the inside of the building and different colors on the outside? Why is the McDonald's logo the colors that it is? Because your environment and the information that you take in through your eyes has a strong and well-documented effect on your psychology.
Absolutely, as does what we hear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the amount of, one of the things that is very obvious to me this particular weekend is I'm taking regular breaks, coming back to my hotel room, closing the door, sitting alone in the quiet, and letting myself decompress for 10 minutes. Because one of the things that I'm finding is I'm going downstairs being surrounded by a million people that I love in one of the best environments that I've ever been in my
Absolutely.
life. But there's so many people and everything's talking and there's all this noise and the vibration in the air and it's I'm getting fatigued by the social side of it.
Right, and
I
it's
need to,
not that the vibration is low or anything or even off. It's just
a lot.
intense.
Yeah, it's just intense.
It's
That's a great
just
word for it.
intense,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like, let's take a break.
Yeah.
And I think that's healthy. We go back to that place around personal development right there.
Okay.
That is you taking care of you for me. And
Yeah.
that's me taking care of me for you.
Okay, so
Right.
to also tie back into the personal development thing, we talked about this desire to be mentally healthy and emotionally healthy individuals, and we talked about why you would want to do that, right? But how does your practice make that happen? What is it about? First off, what does your personal practice look like, and how does it create that cause for that effect? You're doing a thing for a goal. You're saying oh, well, I'm doing these types of things because it makes me a better person, and here's why I value those things. What is it about your practice that you're getting something out of? And what does it look like when you're doing your practice?
My practice keeps me centered and balanced.
Okay.
My practice keeps me rooted in me, which I'm going to go on my little hope tirade, okay?
Okay. All right.
I call myself hope-free.
Okay.
I am hope-free. I like reality. I like to look at reality. I like to say, I don't like that reality. I'm
Yeah.
going to change that reality. I'm not going to hope about the reality. I'm going to change the reality.
Okay.
Right? So I don't smoke the hopium.
The hopium.
Okay.
That's really good.
Okay, I do not smoke the opium.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm just like, oh, I want this in my world. Okay, I'm going to do what it takes to make this happen in my world and focus on that. And then there's a point where you're like, okay, that's not moving. What do I need to do different? For me, hope doesn't help me do that. Right? Being inspired helps me do that. Feeling strong, like this must be in my world, or I want to explore this inside of me, or I would really like to kind of smooth that edge out.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's me doing that work that makes me a better human. I want to be a better human because I want to relate better.
Right. And so you think that it's giving you a tool in order to shape yourself in a way that you deem you should be. And it's so like you're talking a little bit about like I've got this rough edge. I've decided that it's going to be this way. I'm going to shape myself into the
absolutely
to grind down
absolutely
that edge.
Right.
Right.
And we're using that rock shaping kind of thing. I usually call it alchemy. Think about that the crucible and going in and doing the transmutation of. And it's not that, oh, this thing is horrible about me. It's like, oh, wow, I had this really strong reaction to this thing. What's under there?
Yeah.
Let me uncover that. So the next time I have an interaction with somebody where that might come up, maybe it's not so strong. It might still come up, right? But let me do the work so that I can free myself from things that keep me in bondage.
Yeah.
Right? Things that keep me not fully being myself.
Because it's putting you in the driver's seat.
Right. Because, and that's the thing. I want to be in the driver's seat of my world, right?
Right.
And Tarot ID, reality selection.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, reality is important. Like, I'm in this reality. I'm experiencing this world in this way right now, right? And of course, it's through my lens, and your mileage may vary.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But it helps me be more concrete about the steps I need to take to do change.
Okay.
Right. And a lot of times it's ritual, it's dance, it's creativity, it's me going, hey, Jupiter and Venus are conjunct. Gee, I've got Jupiter Venus conjunct in my chart. You think maybe I should do some magic?
Right.
And work that energy and like really see what does that bring up in me? How does that become its shining light?
Yeah.
It's balanced well.
Right.
And the short answer is I don't understand why people don't do it. I don't understand. I mean,
I don't agree with why they don't do it, but I can understand why like the number one reason why people are not fucking with the occult in general is because there were people telling them for generations, for thousands of years.
Sure. And
trying to shape communities for thousands of years by telling them, oh, hey, by the way, that's dangerous and you'll lose yourself.
No, I get that from that perspective, but I'm talking more about the personal development
piece.
Yeah,
totally.
Like whatever you use, maybe it's the occult, maybe it's, yoga. I don't know. Everybody's going to do what they're going to do to get to those places where they hopefully want, well, not everybody's going to do it, but people that choose to do it, they're going to do whatever practices they're going to do. And it is about personal development. It is about being a better human. It is about how do I do good in the world? It is about how do I make space for everybody else to be in their effulgence and their light.
Yeah.
Right? We say every man and woman is a star, right? I believe that. I mean, I'm just like, wow, look at look at you shine. I want you to shine because I want to shine.
Right.
Right. And when we allow people to be in that place, not that we're allowing them for ourselves.
Okay.
Not that I'm putting anything on them. They get to do what they get to do.
Right. Totally.
But when I allow them to be them for myself, I can experience all kinds of grand, beautiful things from this authentic human being who's being real with me.
Right.
And again, we come back down to connection. We come back down to community. I think somewhere out there it says that people feel loved when they are heard. Right.
There's some really thought-provoking truth in that statement.
Right. We feel loved when we are heard. And so when I speak to someone who maybe does similar practices or at the very least is on a personal development mode,
Right.
I am understood.
Yeah.
And if I'm not understood, then we talk about what we don't understand and we experience each other, and then we, move to a place of silence and experience each other more, and then do a dance where I come away better. And I hope you do too, right? Leave them better than you found them.
Yeah.
Right. And there's no cherished outcome to the idea of like, I can't tell you how to be better after I found you.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm not gonna harm you intentionally. I want to uplift you. I want to inspire you. I want you to be most awesome. And that's everybody I meet.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I love to just love. Like, it just is the baseline. Right?
Yeah. And one thing that I have seen often, and it really brings like a sour note to my heart, where somebody gets into the occult because, okay, so like, your perspective is one that I often see where, the occult is empowering them towards, or their ritual or their practice, or however they define themselves, is empowering them towards the self-betterment and the better communication with others and that sense of community and feeling fulfilled at the end of the day, right?
Sure.
Because I get fulfilled by being a member of a community and them feeling fulfilled, and that generates the positive emotions that I want to experience in my life in the first place, right? Like, what do you really want? Do you want to be fucking miserable and all powerful, or do you want to be fucking surrounded by people you love? Like,
And still be all powerful.
And still be all powerful, right? Like, and it breaks my heart because, like, a lot of times you'll come across people who you'll be like, well, why are you getting into this? What is it that you're getting out of it? Or they're asking for book recommendations. They're asking for access to the temple. They want to maybe initiate with that group or the other group, or like those types of things. And you're like, well, what is it that is drawing you here? And they're like, I want power over others. I want to destroy my enemies. I want to make everyone hurt the way I hurt. And
it's so much work. It's so much work to do that. It's so exhausting.
But then there's also this like,
Right.
I think it's super exhausting, but there's this other side of it too, where it's like, is that really what you want? Do you really want to just destroy, or do you want to not feel the pain? Because is it that I want to make others hurt like I hurt, or is it that you want to stop hurting?
I mean, the truth is, right, one would think that it would be, I want to stop hurting.
Yeah.
Right.
And you deserve to stop hurting.
Absolutely. Right. And this idea of, well, they caused me pain, so I need to punish them.
Right. I'd rather hit a point where your bullshit doesn't affect me.
Exactly.
I've risen above it,
I just kind of want to be like, okay, I don't have any time for that. I'm out. Because I'm going to go over here where these other people are going, hey, I see you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasting time on people that could care less about your well-being.
Yeah. Well, often the
Yeah.
people that are feeling this way, it's coming from a place of pain.
Sure.
Because the times that I have been willing to wrong others, have been the times in my life where I was the most consumed by my own depression, my own pain, my own internal torment. Right.
Absolutely.
And when I see people that are like reaching out for that, where they're like, what's the best book to curse someone? What's the best way to summon a demon to make me all powerful and rule my enemies? How do I, take control of that other person's life? Like when they start asking those kind of questions, the first thing I think to myself is, I really hope that you work through this pain that you're suffering right now. Because
that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
Deep pain. And I have compassion for it. And at the
Exactly.
same time, I'm like, yeah, that's not the way to stop being in pain.
yeah,
Causing more pain just causes more pain.
right.
I don't know if you're going to be able to transmute your stuff by doing it that way.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'll be honest.
know,
I went
right?
through a really dark stage where I was, I wasn't using magic aggressively towards others, but I was using my spoken word in like ways that was hurting other people. And I was,
Sure.
maybe like the ways that I went about problem solving was abrasive, and like I was willing to stomp on others in order to get what I wanted because I deserve it, and blah blah blah. And every step that I took in that direction, I suffered more. Until I was just like, you know what, fuck all of this bullshit. Fuck all of them. Fuck all of everybody else in the world. And now I've done the worst thing I can possibly do, which is I've isolated from every single fucking person in the world. And now I'm in the ultimate hell that I have created for myself. Congratulations. You're the most powerful being in your universe. No one else even exists because you have banished them all from your life. Great job, dumbass.
Right? I'm like, oops.
And I'm talking to myself in the past when I say that. And so a lot of the experience of working on myself, and working on myself through the paradigm of ritual, through the paradigm of alchemy in specific, has been really potent for change. As well as a lot of hermetic systems have been really inspiring for me to be able to analyze like the different stuff that's going on, and sometimes externally and sometimes internally. For me, it has been like, all right, bud, you hit rock bottom, you dumb piece of shit. Now climb out of it, because you don't feel better down here. Now you're in a locked steel box. There's nobody else to talk to. And like at first it feels great because it's like, fuck yeah, they hurt me and now I hurt them and I turned out the victor and I'm more powerful. And there's something empowering about like being the dictator, the archetype of the dictator. Like there's something about like, because you never have to address your own bullshit, and anybody else that comes to challenge your power gets smote. And there's something empowering about that. But it's a false empowerment.
It's a false empowerment. It is a false empowerment. And I remember this one time where I did that.
Yeah.
And I was like in second grade, and I got on the bus, and this girl was sitting in my seat, and I was like, get out of my seat. She's like, no, I'm sitting here. And I'm like, get out of my seat. She's like, no, I'm sitting here. And so I pulled her hair.
Mm-hmm.
And, people might laugh about that, but I was mean. And I was like, you're in my way. How dare you be in my way? This is where I want to be.
Right.
Like, it sums up exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then after that experience, because she did not give way, and more power to you, sister, right? More power to you.
Now looking
right?
back, you're like, good job.
Yeah, right. Thank you for holding your own. And later I felt so guilty. Yeah. So guilty.
Right.
And the feeling of guilt is not a happy feeling at all. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's disturbing. At least it was to me. And it was this place where I began to realize, and of course moved more deeper into the philosophy of what I realized at that time. I was in second grade, remember that. So,
right.
But I realized
I figured from the hair pulling as opposed
right,
to the
but
shank.
I felt so guilty, and I hated how I felt so bad.
Yeah.
That I decided, well, if I don't want to feel like that, I shouldn't behave like that.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's how I started to live my life. I don't want to feel guilty about what I'm doing. I want to feel good about what I'm doing. I want to go home and, snuggle with my little lamb and read my book and not be all mind fucked
right.
by guilt and, oh, you shouldn't have done that, and you were a horrible person. Like, you get to choose how you feel. When you make conscious decision around, wow, I don't want to feel that. So if I don't want to feel guilty, how about behaving in a manner where I don't have to feel guilty?
Yeah, and there's something about like, if I'm consumed by that desire for power and vengeance and, what I consider to be that like domineering strength as opposed to like real empowering strength, right? If I'm consumed by that, every time I see a person, what is my initial reaction? Puff the chest out.
Oh yeah,
get aggressive,
Like, I'm over you. I've
like,
got that power over you. I'm better than you.
Right.
I deserve more than you. Whatever it is. Right.
And that's not really actually. It doesn't actually feel good. It feels what it really feels like is, oh, there's a threat. Well, I'm gonna fucking get the threat and like blah blah blah.
I'm gonna hit them before they hit me. And
right.
I mean, you can't have good relationships if that's your mode.
Right. But if your reaction to life is aggression, if you get into the mode where you're like, I'm gonna fight everything in the entire universe and I'm going to win, then everything in your life will be a fight and you'll always be fighting. But if you start to accept the idea that like your reaction to these situations can be love, it can be introspection, it can be these positive sides of things, even when something shits in your face. So you're having, if you're totally consumed by the dark, right, then your reaction to the universe is your own self-torment. True. You torture yourself with your own fucking emotional state. You isolate yourself. The few times you do have a friend is because, you're powerful and they're powerful, but you'll turn against each other anyway.
Right.
Just give it a couple of months, and I don't know how much of friends you're really going to be, right? Because the ego can get in the way of those two individuals like really having a good time, right? But if you go on to the other end of the spectrum, like now your initial reaction to experience in life is positive, and now you live in paradise. Everything feels good. I meet a stranger. Hi, it's nice to meet you. This is just a fucking friend I haven't met yet.
Let's have the adventure.
Something happens out in the world and you're like, oh shit, like, I broke something that I really fucking love, like, man,
now I know
I should strap it down. All right, cool. There's a lesson I didn't know to learn. And so your response to the negative and the positive and the unknown starts to become a positive response. Now, if you live in a world of negative responses, then the world is hell. Everything sucks for you.
Well,
and if you live in a world of positive responses, you're in a fucking paradise.
Let's back up. Let's back up from the negative positive thing for a little bit and do a little definition around that, right? Okay. There's the negative response where my life sucks and it's everybody else's fault.
Absolutely.
Right? That's the hell I think you're talking about, right?
Absolutely.
It's everybody else's fault. I'm in torment because you're doing this to me. And then there's what I would classify as the negative response, the yang response of, oh, wow, I kind of sucked there. I was an asshole.
Right.
Right. That's an acknowledgement, right, in that space. And we can say, oh, I can balance that now. Yeah.
See, now you're cueing into, I think you're kind of cueing into, to me, it sounds like, to the third category, which I was going to build on, which I think is really, really interesting, right? Because then there's eventually this other option other than everything in the world is fucking rainbows and sunshine.
Right. And unicorns, farts, right.
Because really, it's not the best fucking way to live, right? Or everyone else is my enemy.
Right.
Right? I'm consumed by fear and torment and anger and confrontation, and I'm alone, right? They're two ends of a spectrum, and really existing somewhere in the middle with a healthy balance in between them allows you to go, I should incorporate this part of myself that I'm denying exists. I could have been better in that moment. Mm-hmm. I could build myself up and become a better person and actually progress, actually not have to delusion myself into super positive rainbows and sunshine land and just be a better person, build up, right? And I do kind of think of that as like the next logical step,
Well, I think it is. I mean, I think that it's about responding.
Yeah.
Overreacting. Because, those extremes react.
Yeah. Okay. So
right.
I love the responding versus reacting thing. Please explain it so that it's captured on the podcast.
Okay. So we react because we're triggered, or we react because we're hangry. We react because, we're surprised.
Right.
I think that balance is more likely when we choose to pause, even if we react inside ourselves, or even like jump back, to pause and say, whoa, what do I want my actual response to be? Because
Yeah, to take the extra time to go, here's the stimuli.
right,
My reaction would be anger, or my reaction would be, anything, any
whatever
reaction,
it is,
whatever
but-
the split second is.
and how do I want to respond? Is this
Right.
actually an anger thing, or am I just like off,
Right.
or whatever? Because again, we talked earlier about all the waters and how we get knocked off of balance easy.
Absolutely.
So really learning how to respond rather than react makes sense to me, because my response is, oh, wow, I feel really anxious. When I'm anxious, say I have a tendency to snap at people because I'm anxious or whatever,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm in a fear state,
Right.
Oh, I'm really anxious. Okay, what's making me anxious? Can I remove myself from the stimuli? Is a response,
Yeah.
not I'm going to be freaked out and making everybody miserable because I'm anxious, but I'm not willing to do something about my anxiety.
Right. And like the difference between a reaction and a response is that whether it's a half second or a 5 second or a 10 minutes that you recluse into some other space, it's the amount of time that you give yourself in between the stimuli and whatever action comes out of you next.
Exactly.
If you do it
Yeah.
immediately,
Yeah.
then you are reacting to
You
a
are
thing,
reacting.
reacting to the stimuli. If you give yourself enough time to engage the cognitive side of you or the emotional side of you in order to make sure that your action that comes next is going to be something that is the way that you want it to be, as opposed to the way that it forced you to be, that extra 3 seconds.
It really
is
makes a
the
difference.
with
It really
responding.
makes a difference. And especially if we can catch ourselves when we are triggered, or we are like, what the,
Yeah.
that giving ourselves space really matters.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to do a shout out to the silence workshop,
Oh, yeah.
right? That place, right? Giving space. There's rests in music. Oftentimes people see music as it's not the notes that are being played, but the notes that are not being played.
Yeah.
Right. So how do we give space, a place of stillness, a place of pause, before we really come out of the gate with, oh, wow, I got really angry about that. Like, am I going to express this anger, or am I going to choose another way to respond? I'm still feeling the anger, maybe.
Right.
Right.
And don't suppress that either.
Right.
Don't run away from the fact that the anger exists.
Not at
Don't
all.
deny its existence. Recognize and go, I'm feeling anger. I'm not anger.
Right.
One
I'm
of the
feeling
stupidest
anger.
things we ever say to ourselves
This
is,
is,
I am angry.
something. Right. Yeah.
You
I
know?
am angry. Right.
Right.
You know,
be like,
like-
oh, I'm experiencing the sensation of anger, and this is the stimuli for it, and I'm going to choose to react to the anger in insert whatever your will is.
Right.
Like whatever you're actually
It's a
choosing to do.
passing thing, right? It's a passing thing. And so being able to say, wow, I'm feeling anger in response to that stimuli, and the initial response is to back, to growl back.
Yeah, the reaction.
The
is
reaction
like,
is to growl back,
Yeah.
and the ability to give yourself a minute and say, I don't want to express that energy out of me,
right.
right? It doesn't mean we don't feel the anger. We can look at that person and say, wow, I really feel angry about that. I want to talk to you about that. I can't right now.
Right.
Right.
And one of the reasons why I think that extra time helps, it really can be a half second. Or sometimes you need some introspection time. You need to spend 20 minutes on
Absolutely.
the idea, right? And that's okay too. But one of the reasons why reaction will always be first, and whereas response is always going to be last, is because the front of your brain is the part that is the intellectual side. It's the self. It's the part of the brain that evolved last. It's the thing that makes you human. It's the seat of your consciousness. When you think of where is the you in you? If I cut off your foot and I throw it out the window, did I throw you out the window? How many parts of you can we really take away before I've removed the you? Most people associate themselves with this seat right about here, right? And that's really the part of your brain that creates that human experience, right? Now, the more primal side of your brain is located right at the back of this, the part that does all the automatic responses, the anger, the fight or flight, the how does your heart beat, how does your lungs breathe, what is your response to, like with adrenaline and like, getting everything going really, really strong because, it's a primal reaction. And so
Sure.
it's like there's a bear. You're a caveman.
Well,
and
there's
so,
the saber-toothed tiger fear
the
or
saber-toothed
stuff
tiger,
versus the thing that's, this is a conditioned response or this is a
Right.
response I've subscribed to. Anger's always helped me before, has it?
Right.
Right.
So, okay. So,
That,
so,
yeah.
so one of the reasons why that matters, right,
Yeah.
is because if you look at your nervous system, the thing that is the farthest away from all of the other things is the front of your brain, not the back of your brain. Even though this is the seat of your consciousness, the information has to travel a whole extra 7 or 8 inches before it can get to your mouth, to your eyes, to your body to do the physical things, right? Now that's a really, really important thing if you're like designing something that needs to survive in the wilderness. There's a caveman, this saber-toothed tiger's right there, is like put the fight or flight right next to the spinal column so that information can instantly get out of the brain, send out a response, and the reaction is boom, there it goes, right? But if you're going to interact with your humanity, you have to give it the extra 2 seconds to not let that part of the brain be the part that fires first.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah, I think giving it a minute,
Yeah.
in that metaphorical minute, it might actually be a minute. It might
Might
be
be
the
a half
5
second.
seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think that's a seat of love for ourselves,
yeah.
giving ourselves space to how do I want to actually project my energy into the world. And reactions are reactions and responses are deliberate.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that, at least in our community, we're intentional beings.
Yeah, and there's something really real about the difference between a reaction and a response is which thing was in control. Were you in control and you're responding to something the way that you think that you should and that you choose to do? Or are you reacting to something and you're the slave of your reactions? So when you say something like, well, he made me so angry and so I screamed at him. You're being ruled by the anger. When you say, yeah, that thing that he said made me really angry and I chose to do this instead, or separate myself from the situation, speak in this certain tone. Maybe you chose, maybe it was a healthy time to tell the person to go fuck themselves. That's acceptable too.
Absolutely.
Set healthy boundaries for yourself. But at least now you're in the driver's seat.
You're in the driver's seat. And to remember that our reactions are information. Hello, data stream. When we react to things, that's information for us. Like, oh, I'm really angry about this. Wow, why am I angry? Right? Anger can be a really good friend of yours. It tells you something's wrong.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's not just that's the fear response, saber-toothed
Yeah,
tiger.
the saber-toothed tiger,
But
the bear
like
in the
anger
woods
response because of whatever is going on. It's good information.
Right. Someone mistreated you.
Somebody mistreated
was absolutely
you.
disrespectful to you.
They were
Made you upset.
disrespectful. They told you who you were.
You were cheated by a company or a person.
Whatever.
Like,
And it really does come down to I'm not being seen. I'm not being heard. Right. I'm being disrespected, which means on this layer, like you don't actually see me as another entity that is equal to you.
Right.
Right. And so anger's our friend. It says, hey, this is not a great situation. This was disrespectful to me, or this doesn't feel good, or, wow, why am I always angry when I'm with this person? Right. Information. Maybe you don't want to be with that person.
Right.
We're not talking about making them bad. We're talking about how I feel in my situation, in my life, with whatever the stimuli is. I get to hopefully choose the stimuli.
Yeah.
Right? That's the response. I'm going to choose the stimuli.
Right.
And so that I can be in more response mode rather than react mode. Now, obviously, we live in a world where reaction's going to happen. Right?
I
We're
don't
gonna
think
react.
That, yeah,
We're gonna
I don't think
react.
it's possible to completely avoid it.
No, I mean, we're
I
going to
just think,
react.
but one thing that I will say as well is that anger, confrontation, and potentially even violence, depending on the situation, there is a time to unleash that beast, right? There is a time where it is healthy and okay for you to scream in someone's face. Mm-hmm. It's not every time that you get angry.
No, it's
But
not every time you get angry.
You shouldn't kick the beast out entirely. You should rule the beast. You should make sure that you only utilize that tool when it is absolutely necessary. Don't let it run your life. But don't get around it angry either.
Well, I'm not
be
really
able to stand
into
up for yourself.
excising parts of us that are like that's anger is something that happens. We're human.
It's a part of who
It's
you
a
are.
part of who we
Yeah.
are. And I recently was in a situation where I was really, really angry about what was going on. And it was a situation that happened over time.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself being so consistently angry that I just finally looked in the mirror one day and said, there's a reason you're angry. Maybe you ought to unpack that.
Yeah.
Instead of just being angry.
Right.
And I did, and I didn't like what I saw. And I was like, well, I don't want to live in this environment.
Right.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry that didn't work out with that person. I really love that human.
Yeah. And that's not only just true with anger either. I think it's true
I
with
think
a
it's
lot
true
of
with
the negative
any of the
emotions
things,
and
right?
experiences. Like
Yeah.
depression is a really, really good red flag that something in your daily life is not right.
It's true.
Now, don't get me wrong. There are a plethora of people that maybe something about that is just genetic. Something's just misbalanced. That totally happens. And I'm not discrediting their experience. And I hope that those people get help in any way that we can get them help. But there's also a very true component that often depression is like a warning sign that, hey, something you're doing to your body or yourself or your mind, it's not right. Anger is a similar one. So, like you find yourself getting angry all the time. And
Right. Like something's
eventually,
not right.
You
It's
kind of have to
information.
give yourself, it's
information.
It's
And
information.
it tells you to take a look at things. I mean, depression is complicated.
Yeah.
And there's situational depression. I feel
Absolutely.
bad because this thing is happening, or I'm doing this, or I'm putting this in my body. That's the kind of depression that you're gonna be like, whoa, wait a second. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel good. I don't want that in my life. That makes me feel down.
Right. For me, the moment in my life where I was the most depressed, it was an incredibly loud warning sign that there was something in my lifestyle that needed to change. Because I was working nights, and I hadn't seen the sun in a year, and I also wasn't around people. So it was dark all the time, and I was alone all the time. And it made me really, really, really depressed in a way that is honestly kind of terrifying that I can be reduced down to that thing, And I would never say that all depression is the same or that everybody's experience is the same. But I would say that if you're experiencing a lot of depression, it's probably a good time to sit down and go, is there some factor that I do that could be contributing to this that I have like a way to change? In my case, it was I need to change jobs so that I'm around people, so I'm awake during the daylight, and so I'm spending more time with my family, right? And for other people, it might be I need to stop drinking.
Sure.
It might be I'm spending too much time on a screen. It might be I'm not taking care of myself in some plethora of ways.
Right.
And in some people, it might just be, my brain doesn't produce the right amount of dopamine and serotonin. I need to get on a medication or talk to a doctor about certain types of techniques that will enable me to increase that chemical compound. So it's always going to manifest differently. But all of those dark things, the depression, the anger, the sadness, the things that really have the potential to rule you from that emotional reaction side, they're good information.
They're really good information.
They're really,
really good information.
Yeah.
I mean, I am appreciative of that kind of information about myself because I can really unpack that, find out what's going on in my world, make my world a better place.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I am empowered to make my world a better place, my personal world a better place. That's all I can do. I can't do it for you. I can't do it for them. I can do it for me. And that's what we come back to. That's good information. How do I change this for me?
Right.
And, let's not slide down the, well, I'm just going to do it for me because I'm the only thing that's important. No, come back to, I'm doing it for me, but I'm also doing it so I can exist better in the world.
Right. Yeah, and that's one thing is like okay, so it's a really, really common realization, and I often hear it with people that are experimenting with psychedelics. I often hear it with people that are experimenting with religious philosophies. I often hear it with people that are just like really analyzing what it means that there is a universe, from like a more pragmatic scientific side. It's common for people to recognize I am one water droplet in an ocean. I am part of the whole. I'm one individual in the mass that is the multiple, right?
Yeah.
And it's a mind-blowing realization, and it's really, really exciting and interesting. But then like there's the next step. There's the next question, which is like, all right, if I am, is there a relationship with that whole as above, so below thing that we all seem to be pointing out often when we're talking about that being a part of the whole, like if I improve myself, does the universe improve? Like, can I build the universe into a better place by addressing my own shit? Like, does it make my community healthier if I'm healthier? And honestly, it's one of those ideas that gets thrown around a lot in like philosophy, like that idea of like Gandhi, for example. Gandhi said, "Be the change you want to be in the world," right? And that's a really brilliant pointing directly at this as above, so below concept,
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, I'm using as above, so below in just this one respect. It's a much wider idea and taps into way other topics as well.
Sure,
so
there's layers there. There's layers.
Explanation of as above, so below. This is just one example of it.
I've got this. I guess you would call it a koan, or just some kind of saying that has stuck with me since I heard it first. Now, I do not know who this is originally attributed to. Mm-hmm. So there's that disclaimer, right? But I heard it, and I said, "Oh." And it's if nothing we do matters, then the only thing that matters is what we do.
I like that. I'm gonna have to sit with that one for a while, though. Yeah, because one of the things that it reminds me of it reminds me of nihilism, mm-hmm. where a lot of people use nihilism as a reason to be all shitty and depressed about everything. But nihilism is actually liberating in the fact that it says nothing fucking matters, so you matter.
Right.
Like,
cheerfully nihilistic over here. I'm like, oh yeah, right.
Because like if you are this insignificant speck of dust moving through the universe at 1 billion miles an hour and only existing for half of a fucking second, the only thing that matters is your immediate reality. Because
and how do I want to be in the world? How do you want to be in the world? Right? Like I'm
exactly.
choosing how I want to be in the world.
A lot of that.
And for me that stuck with me. I heard that and I went, huh, and then I had to go meditate on that for a few months, and then it just became part of that consistent meditation for me. It's part of my worldview now. Like, what am if nothing matters, then what I'm doing right now matters. Yeah. How do I want to be in the world? Because that matters.
Right. It's often a problem of scale, I've noticed. Mm-hmm. If I zoom too far in, my ego gets too big, right? And if I zoom too far out, I get depressed. And I'll use an example that is the broad stroke of life. But when I noticed this, I noticed it in every aspect of my life. And you can flip it on its head, where you can go, I am depressed. Now I should try to zoom in a little bit, mm-hmm. or vice versa, right? But like, to use the really broad stroke example, you are this gigantic mass of billions, trillions of atoms, all spinning around, interacting with each other. Yeah, and if you zoom in far enough in the world, you realize that you are fucking ginormous. You are godlike, the way that you shape these trillions of things to your will. And from their perspective, from the perspective of the atom, mm-hmm. they don't even realize your greatness. You are God in that situation. Mm-hmm. The entire environment of the atom is just blown apart and shaped and shifted, and you also are a member of a species that's capable of utilizing something like the electron in order to I mean, really calculate anything on Earth and to fly things in the sky and to, I mean, it's godlike power.
Sure.
But that's a really, really easy way to get lost in the ego trip, you know? And then on the end of the spectrum, if you're zoomed way, way, way too far out, if you're like, the universe is so vast that nothing at all matters, I am worthless, nothing I will ever do will ever make a change, because there are billions of stars, trillions of stars in the universe, all of them planets operating around them. They will all exist for, you know, for forever, and I will only exist for a blink of an eye. And if my only goal was to try to draw a straight line in reality, if I used every moment of my life to do nothing but draw a line on the ground from here to there, it would be so minuscule that no one would ever find it anyway. I'm fucking worthless, right? And I realized when I was inspecting that idea is that I can change my scope of how zoomed in or zoomed out I am in order to find the interesting sweet spot where it's like, you know what? If I zoom into the size, instead of looking at the size of the atoms and the experience of that and being consumed by that, and instead of looking at the size of the universe and being consumed by that, what if I think about the scale of this hotel room?
Right. The size of me.
Yeah.
Right.
What if I think about just this one interaction and how meaningful and important it is to sit down and talk to my friend for an hour?
Right. Right. I mean, that's
an
the
issue of
truth.
scale.
It's an issue of scale. Where is your lens focused?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And like newsflash, you're in control of where the lens is focused.
Absolutely.
And I found it in other places too, where I was like, man, I feel really shit at my job. Like I feel like, you know, like I'm looking at the large corporate structure that is me being in this, you know, like I'm at the bottom of the totem pole, and like how much does my contribution really help this multi-billion-dollar company and blah blah blah. And then if you go, hang on, I'm depressed. Zoom in. What is my day like? Person calls me up, and I help them, and that's a meaningful fucking thing. You know, I fucking helped. I made somebody's day easier. That makes me feel good. That fills me with a positive feeling. You know, they had a much easier day. They appreciated me. They, you know, I got to connect with a person for a couple of minutes. Like that's actually like a really cool thing.
And
you know?
You had the choice to make that interaction really awesome or make it shitty.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in control of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so did they, right? Like,
Absolutely,
I mean, they could start off being really like kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
And you were like, okay, I'm not going to go with that flow. I'm going to energetically come at it in a way that hopefully won't make them more angry, but will diffuse it.
Right.
And, you know, if we're successful in that, then that's a win, right? We all get into a better vibe.
Yeah.
We all get into a better, let's actually solve this problem instead of yelling at each other for 20 minutes. You yelling at me for 20 minutes, so I don't want to solve your problem. Right?
Yeah.
You know, right?
Yeah.
I think that's, I tell people I'm introverted by nature, which is true, and yet I have learned how to communicate and be, have social skills. And the reason I've chosen to do that is because the interaction with others matters that much. I don't care if they're the Walmart person behind the checkout. It has got to be a shit job. I'm going to come smiling and be happy and have an interaction. I'm having a better time at Walmart now. I hope they're having a better time too at Walmart.
Right.
Right. The telemarketers, or you call the people up on the phone and you've yelled at the phone because it's press 3 or say some such for this, and you're yelling at the phone because the phone recognition doesn't
work
or whatever, right? So by the time you get to the person, you're a little agitated.
Yeah.
And here we go into reaction response. It's not their fault, right? Stop a minute, say, oh, wow, this person's probably already been yelled at today.
Right.
Do I want to do that too? Or do I want to have a good time? And, you'll get the ones that have the scripts, right? And I'm like, no, don't do the script with me. Okay, we're going to have a good time. Let's have a conversation. Let's me treat you as a human being. I know you want to help me. Let's have a good time and let's get this done.
Right.
Right. That again, all that matters is what you do. I could have made it really shitty for all of us, or I can make it a nice time. Right?
Yeah. And the thing I like the most about that, and I think a really, really solid finishing point for the conversation, is that you're suggesting that you're in the driver's seat, that you're the one in control, that like whether we're looking at like the perspective side of it, or that we're looking at the action side of it, or that we're looking at the internal state, emotional well-being side of it, or the being a part of a community side of it, like in all of those situations, like where is the thing that's making all of those things happen and come into existence and manifest in reality?
I am making the choice.
Right.
I am God. I am
right.
creating that.
Exactly.
Right. I mean,
Right.
we are creators.
I believe it a lot more full-heartedly than people realize.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that I do think that there's a lot of layers to this, that there's more to experience, that there's like bigger things than myself. But at the end of the day, in my reality, I get to choose what I look like, or what I look like, what I look at, what's affecting me, how I respond to things or react to things, how big my focal lens is. And that recognition that I'm part of a whole and that I'm in control of my part of the whole means that I get to craft this little section of the community, this little section of reality, you know? And the thing that I love the most about this weekend and this group of people is the incredible amount of support and empowerment towards doing that, towards being the driver.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
I like, this is my meat suit. I'm going to operate it.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to do all the layers. I'm going to operate this thing that I get to do here.
Yeah.
Labor and heroism of incarnation. Like, it's a fun thing to meditate on.
It is.
Right? You know?
It's a really good quote for it, too.
I think that's it, right?
Yeah.
Really, who we are and how we are is our choice.
Yeah. Well, Lyric, I, as always, at the end of our long conversations, feel like we should and will go on for the next 6 hours.
Right?
And I know that the next time that I see you, it's kind of crazy how often we run into each other with how far apart we live.
It's true, because we
I've
live
seen
across
you-
the country.
I've seen you 3 times this year.
I
I've
know,
spent more
right?
time with you than I have friends that live in my town. And we literally live on opposite sides of a continent.
It's true. It's true. It's
crazy.
good. I'm like,
I love
who
it.
do I want to be with? Oh, Nate.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's fun. It's
Yeah.
fun. You're
so
fun.
I really appreciate having you on the podcast. I really appreciate your views and your ideas and like sharing and connecting with me and giving me an opportunity to share that connection with other people so that they can like observe that interaction. I grow from being around you. I love and appreciate you. And I hope that you'll actually come back at a later time.
I
hope
would
that
love to.
This is something that,
Yeah.
we'll do again.
Thank you for asking me.
Oh, of course.
I really appreciate it. I'm having a ball.
We were sitting
I'm like,
downstairs.
that's my friend.
We were sitting downstairs and we were having a great conversation. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking like, I should bring someone onto the podcast and have a good time talking. And then we were like talking for like 40 minutes. And I was like, man, this is a really good conversation.
Wish we were doing it upstairs with the microphones.
we could just be in different chairs.
Right?
You know?
Right?
Yeah. All right.
Excellent.
Thanks for listening to the Whitewood Podcast. This show is made possible by our Patreon members. You can find us on Twitter at Whitewood Show and on Facebook at Whitewood Podcast. For links to all our social media and information about our Patreon, visit us at whitewoodpodcast.com.